And thank you for being with us this morning. My name is Peggy Apthorpe, and I'm a AmeriCorps member with Conservation Nebraska's Common Ground program. Conservation Nebraska is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to preserving and enhancing Nebraska's natural resources and keeping our residents healthy. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenters this morning, but before I do that, I need to mention a few housekeeping items. Your video is not on and you are muted. So if you do have questions, please put them in the chat box and we will answer our questions at the end of the program. Also, we have a survey at the end of the program that it would be very helpful to us if you would complete that, because it helps with planning and funding kinds of issues. So it is really my pleasure to introduce our speakers, Sarah Mason and Ralph Martin, both from Lincoln-Lancaster County Health Department, both very accomplished and interesting people. Sarah is an environmental health educator. Most of her childhood was spent here in Lincoln before she started studying at Augusta College in Sioux Falls and the University of Ghana in Legon.
You got it.
How you pronounce that? Okay. She served as an AmeriCorps member with in Minneapolis with a program called what was the name of the program again, Sarah?
With College Possible.
Right, College Possible. And she has a BA in Government and International Affairs, Theater, and Exercise Science. So she is quite a diverse person. And she also was a social worker with Mercy Housing to help people with affordable housing. Ralph is a senior environmental health specialist and certified hazardous materials manager, plus a licensed professional geologist. He is currently the coordinator of the Lincoln Hazardous Waste Center and a member of the Lincoln-Lancaster Health Department Emergency Response Team, among many other things. So we're very happy that they took the time to be with us, and I will turn the program over to them. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having us here. We are thrilled to have this opportunity to visit with folks here at Conservation Nebraska. And we know that health is an important thing to each and every one of us. I think about March 2020, and that became ever more apparent. But I just want to make the point that this is a beginning of a conversation. Ralph and I are here today, and we will be here tomorrow to answer questions as well. I will give you our contact information and ways to continue to connect with us, because you're going to find out that there are a lot of gray areas in this stuff, and it's part of an ongoing conversation. Science evolves, and we continue to learn and grow as a community and figure out how to keep everyone safe and healthy. So it's an ongoing conversation that we're thrilled to have with you all. Okay, I've shifted slides. Someone holler at me in chat if it hasn't worked. This is our permanent site. This is where you can find us year-round. We are part of the health department, your Lincoln and Lancaster County Health Department. Shout out to Peggy, because we got to meet ahead of this doing vaccination clinics together. So yes, we are part of the health department. So a lot of folks know the health department for vaccinations, STD clinics, and dental care. We are that. We are also an environmental portion. And that environmental side is looking at the spaces and how we interact with the space. And in that realm, we're thinking about our food. Is our food prepared in a way that's going to make us sick? Are childcare facilities set up in a space so that communicable diseases can be contained and not act as super spreaders? We're also looking at air quality, water quality, and waste, which is where we come in at Lincoln's Hazardous Waste Center. Oh, good. I see some conversations coming, and this is exactly what I want from it. So I'm going to go back to these chat questions here at the end, But please keep them coming because today is about you. I do have slides prepared to get us kind of all on the same playing field of understanding if you're new to the conversation, but really it's about your learning. So we do want that conversation. Use that chat feature. It is not about our song and dance that we have prepared. It is about advancing your understanding of how to protect your health and the health of those you love. So good. We will answer those questions at the end. I'm just going to save them in that chat box, but keep them coming. So to start with, I just wanted to kick us off with this quote. In waste, I think this is a great quote to get us started because it reminds us that anytime we're throwing things away or saying that we're throwing it away, we miss the point that waste is going somewhere. And with household hazardous waste, there is a history of environmental injustice of that somewhere for household hazardous waste has historically been to poorer, browner communities. But there is nothing like a global pandemic to help remind us that your health is my health and the health of everyone in the community is impacting my own health. So we are, as Dr. King would say, inextricably bound. And so when we throw things away, we're missing the bigger picture of what's happening with our waste. Annie Leonard, if she's a new name to you, I want you to write it down. You've got homework. I want you to jot it down and look up the story of stuff, storyofstuff.org. It's a great place for folks to begin thinking about some of the complications when we're using a linear economy and not thinking cyclically and sustainably for environmental stewardship. It's understandable for children, and don't be shy to use those simple teaching tools with those you love who aren't children too. We need clear messages with all of this. So check out storyofstuff.org. So this is where our waste currently goes. Source reduction. That might be instead of buying a new pair of pants, you put a patch on pants that you already have. You've reduced the need to create waste. You're not going to throw those away. Reuse, we're familiar with using it again and again. Maybe rethinking what something could be used for is another option. Recycling, it's definitely part of the solution. But remember, there are limitations. Something like paper or plastic, those components get changed each time they're recycled, and their use and their life or something with utility keeps decreasing as we go. So that's just something to consider when you're thinking about where you want your waste to end up. Another thing that gets used is incineration. Incineration, often we're burning stuff so that we can get that fuel from it and use some other component of it. Not super highly used in our area, but certainly our neighbors in other countries still use this waste regularly. Finally, we go to disposals and landfills. That's usually what people mean when they say, I'm going to throw this away. They mean that you're going to throw it in their garbage can. They're going to take their garbage out to the end of the street. A garbage truck's going to take it to the municipal solid waste site, some sort of landfill. And they've come a long way. This is not a dump. Notice I did not use the word dump, but we're talking about a landfill. So there are liners, there are layers, and particularly for folks in our region here in Nebraska that use Bluff Road landfill, we're extracting the methane gas from it. So we are using some of our resources to add and shift the life of what we might have thought was the end. So instead, we are using like a vacuum to suck out that methane gas and use it for energy. If you're here in the county, Lancaster County, we know that on average, that waste and where it's going really matters because we're producing about 5.5 pounds of waste per person per day. It adds up. And so especially if you start to think about our neighbors that are in more urban areas, they simply can't have that much waste. So this is our where we want to go. This is our vision of where waste should be going. You'll see at the top, the main thing that we're using is source reduction. And when we talk about household hazardous waste today, that's the best thing you can do. You can reduce your need for it. And I'll talk a little bit more about ways to reduce and some more nitty gritty practical things here in a bit. We recycle. That might look like paper, cardboard, plastics. Certainly we recycle. When it comes to household hazardous waste, there is a recycling component as well that we'll talk about. Energy recovery, that's usually when we're burning something and using it for fuel. In household hazardous waste, we are doing energy recovery as well. And then when there's no other option, teeny tiny waste that should be left is going to go to the landfill or disposal. So with household hazardous waste, there are specialized disposal methods and landfills for these materials. So when it comes to household hazardous waste, we're going to think of it in the same waste hierarchy that we would think of with your regular garbage. So household hazardous waste, you'll hear me call it HHW. It's that stuff that might be toxic or flammable, reactive or corrosive. A lot of times, this is the stuff that we keep under the sink, or we keep out in a garage or in a basement on a shelf. It's a small portion of that solid waste in our community. About 1% to 4% of municipal solid waste is this stuff, but it's so important. And I thank you for being here today because it can have a disproportionate impact on our community. Be it exposure that we experience from it being in our homes, or be it exposure should it get into our water and such, that groundwater. So I've got some particular images that I've used. I've used those showing a baby and someone who might be in the aging population because they are also disproportionately impacted due to, with a child, those developmental stages, they're using that endocrine system to really get lots of cues. And so some of our household hazardous waste can disrupt those cues and kind of confuse our bodies. Our seniors, our people who are older, generally have a more complicated health history. Sometimes they're spending more time at home. And so that's why we really want to be thoughtful about our home environment and what we have in it. If you, for no other reason than the safety of others, think about your household hazardous waste differently, I will be thrilled. Because I forgot to mention in that 1 to 4% of your waste that's going to the landfill, it can have a major impact on the people who work there. A refuse worker is 3 times more likely to die on the job than a firefighter or a police officer. And that, I think, is because we haven't done a great job of separating out our household hazardous waste. So by understanding what it is, by the end of today, you'll be able to identify it and make some decisions regarding your own health to mitigate some health risks. So at this point, I want you to throw into the conversation, if you're comfortable, something that you think you might have that is household hazardous waste. Wrong answers are very welcome. It's how we learn. I taught in a classroom for a while, so please, I love wrong answers. Right answers are fine too. So if you have a chat box available to you, you'll see the 3 dots that say more. Open up chat, select it, and you can type in your answer. Excellent. We're seeing some household hazardous waste items pop up there. Oh, I think I'm going to mention every single one of those that you're listing. We've got oil-based paints, Roundup, medicines, paint. Yes. Yes. Thanks, Ralph. All those pesticides. What about all that lawn stuff that you use? We really focus on those things. Another component that people are concerned about, there are those consumer goods. How about the lotion that I put on my skin? No, we're not usually talking about that with household hazardous waste, but is our team with the health department trying to stay at the forefront of issues to understand what something like triclosan in our toothpaste does? Sure, you can count on it. We try to be aware of those items as well, but you're exactly right. Paint, Roundup, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. So here's a little bit about why it has to go. When I visit with folks about household hazardous waste, they often will share with me that, they just thought, it's not really on me. It's not on me as a consumer. Before it gets to the shelf, the Environmental Protection Agency is going to take care of this, right? They're going to make sure that my hardware store isn't carrying anything that could harm me. And yes and no. This is where we get into the gray. So the EPA is tasked with protecting the environment. And so when we talk about household hazardous waste, we're thinking about human health and we're thinking about environmental health. So they definitely are looking at that environmental health piece. Someone like the FDA or the USDA, so Food and Drug Administration, or the Department of Ag, they are thinking also about that human health component. So we get into a lot of this red tape and governmental roles in this. And you don't have to understand all of it, just understand that there's a lot of players. And with a lot of players, things work very slowly. And so that's why it's a great idea to be aware of what's going on. In public health, we really encourage a precautionary principle. And that means, you're not going to find people at the health department working on lung cancer treatment. You're going to find people in the health department teaching and trying to persuade about smoking prevention or to get your home tested for radon, because we want to work at the front end. We want to prevent the harms from happening. So household hazardous waste is one of those areas where we may not have generational causal studies to say this does this right away. So that's why we want you to be thinking about what you're bringing into your household for pest management, lawn care, cleaning products. That's one we haven't mentioned. But we need to be mindful because, as you can see, there's a ton of chemicals that are registered with the EPA, and new products do have to be submitted to the EPA. But there are not that many that have been tested that have raised red flags. And yet we know there are concerns in our communities. So out of those 80,000, 6 have been banned. You'll see formaldehyde come back up again, that it is a component to be aware of. And that's because it's only been banned in a certain use. So there are some limitations on this. We also know, and COVID, I think, has brought this to our attention again, that things evolve. And so we need to stay on top of this and be aware of it, because some of these are emerging issues. And no matter how much the EPA has studied, there is no way to comprehensively look at the synergistic effects, those layers of chemicals upon chemicals. So for instance, there's one risk that goes with using bleach, and there's one risk that goes with using ammonia. You mix them together and you get that synergistic effect, and that's really hazardous. That could be really dangerous. So that's, even as a non-sciencey person, I want you to understand that the EPA, when they're testing, they're not even looking at those layered impacts. So you've got to have your wits about you. Things can impact a chemical's standing, and when those chemicals are in the registry with the EPA, they are getting reviewed cyclically. So something like Roundup, they began to see a lot of complaints come in. There were a lot of concerns about associations with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so the EPA reviewed it again in 2020. So there's a lot that impacts the EPA and the work that they do. And so certainly they've got your back. And certainly you need to keep your own consumption well informed. no matter what, there will be externalized costs. So these are costs that are not captured in that product when you purchase them. So maybe there are health costs down the road to these products, and that's not it's not captured in that payment you make when you check out with that paint stripper or pesticide as you check out at the counter. So for instance, lead's something that we've known about for quite some time. And yet it's still pervasive. Just last week, on May 4th, the EPA settled the case with home renovators in Washington, a large conglomerate, because they were mishandling lead. So this stuff might not necessarily be thinking long-term enough about these costs. And so we want people to shift that thinking. Yes, I might only pay $7.99 at the hardware store now, but if we find out that it is very hazardous as time progresses, what are going to be the costs to the people that encounter it later? Formaldehyde, as I mentioned, we still see it in air fresheners. It's still in cigarette smoke. It's still in some paints and cosmetics. And yet we know it's a carcinogen. So there are going to be externalized health costs. PFAS are kind of that emerging discussion. They're really hot right now in our realm. Congress is finally talking about them. There's talk of taking action, but they've been around for a long time. And this is where I say, yes, the EPA is protecting you, but also new science sheds light on new issues. So PFAS are one of those, and it's found in nonstick products like Teflon, firefighting foams. So a lot of times if you're around military bases, things like that, where they're practicing and using these firefighting foams for chemical fires, we're starting to find that those have high concentrations in the waters of these PFAS. They're everywhere though. They're in fast food. If you're getting a burger and it's wrapped in paper, the waste side of me is excited because I think, oh, it's just a single sheet of paper. Maybe the waste isn't so bad, but it's coated in PFAS because it's grease resistant, it's water resistant. So again, in our world, we're seeing lobbying take place to say, Burger King, McDonald's, big fast food, we want you to shift and use an alternative, to use a new chemical. So PFAS, I think we'll continue to hear in the news about the cost of PFAS and contamination in our water and how we can clean that up. Moving on to this, which is where I really want to spend our time, which is that it's in your hands. You have something to do about it. You can impact your own health. We're not going to get rid of everything. If you were to come check under my sink in my garage, yes, you'll find lots of bottles and spray cans, and there are materials that we keep around. But like most health issues, I want to talk about risk mitigation. We all get in a car and drive. We generally all get in a vehicle and drive or take the bus, and we know there's a risk. It's a risk we're willing to take. That's the level of risk we want to get to with household hazardous waste. So here are some practical tips for mitigation. You gotta know what it is first. So household hazardous waste, they're gonna have words like poison, danger, warning, caution. The lower you can get on that list when you're buying a product, if you can find a product that doesn't use those words, that's your safest bet. When you start to get products that you're bringing into your home that say poison and danger, we're going to give you some tips for what in the world to do with them. So keep in mind that these are the words you're looking for. If you're purchasing something that says poison, danger, or warning, you want to buy the smallest amount possible so that you don't have as much left over. When you're bringing it to us at the Household Hazardous Waste Center, we want to see the least amount possible left to have to dispose of. Okay, so we want you to think carefully before you purchase it. Is there any other product that's safer that could do the trick? Okay, and if I absolutely have to get something that says poison, danger, and comes with all these kind of red flags on the label, we want you to get it in a small quantity so that there's less to dispose of, so that there's less exposure for yourself as well. So let's say you've got those items, you say, I absolutely need this, I can't find an alternative. Well, in that case, we want you to use it properly. So when the EPA is protecting the environment or the FDA is protecting your health, they're thinking about how you can use this properly. So they're reviewing it with the consideration that you're going to follow those directions. You're not going to try to maybe double the concentration to try and get the job done faster. Don't do it. That's not how it was intended to be used. Follow those directions. Keep things in the container that they were purchased in, because that container has your info. It's got those identifying words and it's got those tips for how to use it properly. I can't emphasize this enough. Follow the directions that are on there. Think about how you're storing it, where you're storing it. Of course, we want these out of the reach of, people often think about babies, but what about your four-legged furry friends? Make sure they're going to be safe. Make sure that it's going to be up and away. Sometimes there are smells that they find desirable in these things. We don't want them licking or getting exposure that way. Notice in the picture, you've got a leak-proof container. So what happens if the bottom comes out of one of these containers? What happens if it rusts out? You want to make sure that that's contained. So put them in a leak-proof container. When you're bringing them to us at the Household Hazardous Waste Center, don't let there be a spill in your car. Make sure it's in that leak-proof container again. Cardboard boxes are okay, but they get contaminated too when there's those slight spills and it gets absorbed. So a leak-proof container is really your best bet. You want to be mindful of temperature change because that can impact a lot of these chemicals. So just sticking them outside on the patio is not necessarily your best bet. At the same time, I wouldn't say keep them right next to your dinner table, because a lot of these have an off-gas component even when they're sealed up. And so you want to keep them in highly ventilated areas. Better yet, though, find an alternative. Find a safer alternative for you. So you've got pests, you've got aphids in the garden. What are your other options? Well, think about planting something as a companion plant. So like a marigold to get ladybugs. Don't use a bulldozer when you just need a shovel. You've got a mouse problem. Okay, instead of using a pest that then gets ingested by that mouse, which may then get ingested by another species to then get the poison that was in the mouse on up our chain, instead use a mouse trap. Go to a mechanical solution. Dryer balls are a great example. Those dryer sheets, it might smell amazing and perfumed when you're done, but that's some nasty stuff in there. Those chemicals can be really harsh on our skin, and our skin absorbs so well. So shift, don't use dryer sheets. Shift to those wool dryer balls that are going to have more of a mechanical force to battle static or to get your clothes drier faster. The EPA knows it's not easy to always find these alternatives, and so they've developed a safer choice. And the labeling you may see on some bottles. Look for it next time you're at the hardware store, next time you're purchasing cleaning products. They've developed that label based on the off-gas component, those VOCs, volatile organic compounds. So they know they have a lower volatile organic compounds, the product performance, the packaging, the ingredients, the pH standards. That's what they're looking for before EPA will say, yes, we will call this a safer alternative. to other products. So you've got that safer choice. Certainly look at that. The other thing you can do is you can make safer alternatives. We're going to be talking about some recipes. We're going to be going through your options for everything from silver polish to furniture polish. What can you make using products around your house? There are almost always safer alternatives. So instead of keeping bleach around, something like hydrogen peroxide is a great alternative for disinfecting. It's just really about getting yourself educated on these alternatives. So we'll be here in June 9th, and you can catch us again where we go through some alternatives, whether it's house care to personal care to cleaning products. We can make safer alternatives. So tune in for that, again, with Aging Partners and Conservation Nebraska. Sometimes though, this stuff, you just gotta get it out of our house. So maybe you've identified it, you've seen those words, poison, danger, warning, and you want it out of your house. If you're not gonna use it up, get it out of your house, okay? Put it in that leak-proof container and get it ready to take to the Hazardous Waste Center. If you're not gonna get rid of it, we want you to use it properly and store it correctly. If you want to do your work on the front end, think about buying a safer alternative or making a safer alternative. And then absolutely, when you're ready for that stuff, those poisons, those danger warning products to get out of your house, please, please, please don't get them to the landfill. Bring them to us. Know that it has to go. We're big on that. And bring it to us at Lincoln's Hazardous Waste Center. So again, this is our year-round site, 5101 North 48th. We tried to be pretty accessible, so has to go we thought was pretty easy to remember. Has, H-A-Z as in hazardous. That's our email address. That's our website, has2go.com. Here are some examples of what you can find in different rooms, kind of a room-by-room checklist. And that room-by-room checklist takes you through some of the items that we accept. Now, we accept a whole lot more than this. We just can't list every single product that's out there. We can't go through the 80,000 chemicals, not to mention the different products that get made out of all those chemicals. So that's why I'm saying this is an ongoing conversation. We are a resource here to serve you and to help your health. So use this checklist, reach out to us when you have questions. I do want to go through latex paint, because latex paint often gets brought to us, and it is something that we do not accept at Lincoln's Hazardous Waste Center. And here's why. We have limited disposal dollars. It costs a lot of money to use these specialized landfill to separate, to bulk all of these products. And so we are really wanting to go after that really nasty stuff that we absolutely do not want to touch our water, to be exposed in our air. And so that's why we are not accepting latex paint. Latex paint is water-based, so it is not hazardous. It's the way you can decide if you have latex paint or oil-based, it's the one that when you're using it and you have a little spill, you can get a wet washcloth with soap on it and wipe it up while it's still wet. So take it outside, pop off the can lid and dry it out. Once latex paint is dried, you're ready to roll. It can go in your garbage. If you want to speed it up, mix in some cat litter, mix in some sawdust. The other thing I've seen people do is they'll use an old cardboard box and they'll pour it so that there's a greater drying surface area to speed that process up. But we don't want your latex paint. Thank you so much for thinking of us, but we want to save that disposal for the really hazardous stuff. You'll notice that we don't necessarily take all products that are considered household hazardous waste, and that's because we live in an area that accepts those things already. So we want to make sure that we can channel your waste to the right spot. So something like medications are another item that we don't accept. And that's because in Nebraska, we like to say that take back day for your old medications is every day. Here in Lincoln, we've got over 76 pharmacies that will accept your expired, unused prescription medications. So we do not accept those, but we can also help you find them. So if you forget and you bring it to us, we're going to point you in the right direction. So nebraskameds.org can connect you with those pharmacies that will take those back. And there's also a bunch of stuff that sometimes folks come to us with that isn't household hazardous waste. So something like toner cartridges, tires. What do I do with them? There are lots of resources here in the community, and we're going to point you in the right direction with our waste reduction guide. I should have asked Peggy beforehand. Hopefully we'll have a way to connect with you all afterwards, and we can share out this resource. It's on our city website, the waste reduction guide. If you search for it, you'll find it. It's on our recycling page. This has your house cleaning tips, basically. So when you start doing a big clean out, you're going to know where things go based on this guide. So we often get motor oil. Oh, yes. Lovely. Thank you for sharing that link. Yes. There it is. You can pop it open, bookmark that page, save it. It's going to tell you where things go, like used motor oil. You will find that if you live in Lincoln and Lancaster County and bring used motor oil to us at the Hazardous Waste Center, we could accept it, but we're likely going to ask you to take it to one of the auto parts store that will accept it instead, because they already have a waste stream and a way of dealing with it. And again, it allows us to save those disposal dollars for the really nasty stuff. In 2019, at the Household Hazardous Waste Center, we disposed of over 100,000 pounds of household hazardous waste. And the reason that that number is so telling is because it wasn't bogged down by stuff like latex paint, typical motor oil. We know that that had that really nasty stuff for our environment and our health. And so that's why that number is so impressive to us, is because we don't accept everything, but we will always help you find the right place to get it if it is something that we don't accept. We also have programs for folks who are homebound. So if you yourself, or if you know someone who may be facing the barrier of getting out of their home or lugging this stuff around out of the basement, out of their garage, if that's going to be a barrier for them, that's okay. We have a way to still help them be healthy. It's called Safe Homes for Seniors. It's a program partnership with Aging Partners, another city agency, and they're going to send someone out once someone registers for the program, and that person will be up to snuff and able to identify household hazardous waste and maybe give some recommendations, and then leave it to that person to decide what they want to do. If they want to get rid of it and take it to Lincoln's Hazardous Waste Center, that volunteer from Aging Partners is going to do that for them. So they need not worry if mobility or carrying, if there's some physical barriers there to getting this cleaned up. So sometimes folks want to know, well, what in the world happened? So I take this stuff to you all, and how do I know what happens, that you're not just dumping it in the landfill anyway in one corner? Well, that's where I want to go through why we want you to bring it to us and not just stick it in the landfill. I want you to bring it to us because we go through that waste hierarchy, that triangle with it. We work with a company called Tridebi. That's our contractor right now. And we really like working with Tridebi because they follow that waste hierarchy. So the very first thing they're going to do is they want to pull out and separate those products and say, what can be recycled or repurposed? So when Ralph and his team are sorting your items after you've pulled away and left them, and we've sent you on your way, they are also trained to keep those items out that could be recycled or repurposed, and they're going to separate those. Next, if it can't be recycled or repurposed, we want to see if there's any way to at least get some energy out of it, to use it for fuel. So like our flammable liquids we're using for fuel for cement kilns, it tends to burn hotter than coal. So it just gives it one more way to have utility instead of just throwing it in the landfill. Finally, with some products, we will incinerate them, and not for that fuel purpose, but to create a more stable product for disposal. Excuse me. So something like strychnine can be broken down, or poisons that could be inhaled can be incinerated so that they're a little less dangerous before we get them ready for the landfill. And when Trodebi does have to use that landfill option, it's not going in any city landfill nearby. It is going in a specialized landfill. It is not getting dumped over into a poor country land. It is in a specialized Class C landfill. We've got all the paperwork and the audits to know that that stuff is being handled properly. And so that's why we want you to do that one step of getting it to us so that we can make sure it is in the right spot. What can you do? So once you understand the risks of this, the first thing you can do is take care of your own household. Do a clean out. Go through, identify it. Next time you're ready to buy something, make sure that you're choosing a safer alternative or make a safer alternative. And then bring that stuff that you don't want, bring it to us and help us get the word out about Lincoln's Hazardous Waste Center. Connect with us on Facebook, share our posts so that people in your sphere of influence can learn about this too. And they know, hey, they have learned that this is important to their health. It's probably important to my health as well. We also have ways to connect with us when we do those mobile collection events. So we're not always at our permanent site. A few times a year, we try to get out into the community to, again, reduce those barriers to people using our services. We just had one of those mobile collection events about a month ago, and the turnout's huge. Over 700 folks came by, and we're talking about almost 30,000 pounds of waste in those. So come, engage with us. You're welcome to volunteer with us at those events. But most importantly, spread the word about those events so that other people can access them as well. So here's our contact information. I'm going to shift and make sure that Ralph, if you want to unmute, Ralph, I'm going to let you take some of our questions here in the chat. So first and foremost was about mower oil and whether or not where it should go exactly. Let's see here.
Yeah, mower oil is very similar to that what you would put in your automobile, in that it's a petroleum or synthetic based oil. Oftentimes mower oil has less of the detergents and other things that like a high revving, high temperature motor in a vehicle would, versus a small 4-cycle motor like in a lawnmower or something other small. And then you have the 2-cycle, which is you add the oil to the gas. But any of those oils can be recycled, and we recommend that they take them to the auto parts. So if you change your own oil in your lawnmower, save that, and when you get a container of it and a little bit more than what you're comfortable having stored around your house, maybe 2 or 3 changes, or like one season's worth of oil from your mower, take it in. When you go buy a couple new quarts, take in your old oil, and they'll most auto parts stores that sell oil will gladly take a comparable amount of oil back. So if you're coming in and buying 6 quarts and you bring in 6 quarts, they'll gladly take it. Now, if you show up, with your 12 quarts from your diesel pickup and say, hey, where can I get rid of this? Or your 55 gallons of oil that your dad saved up in his garage for 20 years, that's when you want to start calling us and see if there's other options for large quantities of oil. And we'd gladly help you out. But in the end, it can all be recycled.
Yeah. And that's one of those places where it's an externalized cost. The cost of that oil potentially didn't have the cost of recycling it built in, which is why they'll be happy to accommodate and take back some of your oil. But we also want to think, when we have an excess, where is this going to go? What's the waste process going to be like for it? So we have friends writing in from elsewhere in the state, and they're looking for suggestions. And it gets hard because we serve our city and county. So folks outside of Under the Sink and our services, so Under the Sink in Omaha or Lincoln's Hazardous Waste Center, what tips do you have for them, Ralph?
Well, yeah, it's an unfortunate situation that not all residents have access to the facility that and the services that Lincoln and Omaha have. I do believe that it will get better in the future. I know the state recognizes that, and they are trying to partner with other counties and other regions to develop these services. In the meantime, I would suggest that people in counties that don't offer it, there's probably grants available to their individual county to do mobile collections. They could apply for a grant and have a collection in a community or county-wide in multiple communities. And at least
Casey just mentioned that there, like Fremont Dodge County holds annual HHW collections, and she's a great person to connect with because your Keep America Beautiful, if you have an affiliate, so like Keep Cass County Beautiful just held one. So connect and see if there's a Keep Beautiful in your area as well, because those people often are connected to what Ralph's talking about, those annual events, those mobile collections.
Right.
A good tip.
And there's contractors out there that could possibly, be interested in coming in and providing the services to a county that, the county would just have to ask. Obviously, there's going to be a cost. But sometimes the known cost of providing a service, even if it's just one time, versus the unknown cost of dealing with it somewhere down the road, because the problem is still there. It's not, essentially in those counties, the waste is going to their municipal landfill, because unless the person, or people that have it are throwing it in the ditches, which is a whole nother story, it's going to the landfill. And then you have those associated risks. If it's going to the landfill, it's at least in the landfill, but landfills can leak and do leak, and it's a problem for the future that could be reduced now if the service is provided.
Exactly. Awesome.
Yeah, and so to get more hazardous waste centers, I think the citizenry can call and talk to the Nebraska Department of Environmental and Energy. They can request their county officials, their city officials to try to obtain monies to conduct mobile collections. And it's make your voice heard. You know, nothing's going to be provided unless there's a demand, and the demand has to be known, and it has to be consistent. And once you get that, it's almost, you know, then your officials and politicians and whatnot will want to provide that, because that's what their public is requesting. So just, if you want it, ask for it. And if they don't give it to you right away, ask for it again, and just become informed and spread the word in your own little community. And I think it can happen.
Yeah. We've got a question about how to clean up spills. So for instance, that there's a spill while transporting to a waste center. How do you clean that up carefully?
Sure.
How do you protect your own health?
Right. Yeah. The best way to prevent a spill is to be aware that it likely will happen, and to take some steps to prevent it. So that leak-proof container, if it spills in there, and it's something that we can wipe out for you and keep those wastes at the has-to-go facility, don't spread further, we'll do that. If it's really bad, we'll probably suggest that you leave the container with us, and we'll deal with it and dispose of it. But if it spills at home, read the instructions on the label. They typically will tell you how to deal with spills to a certain extent. If it seems like it's something beyond your means to deal with, call 911. The fire department will show up, and if it's something they can deal with, they will. If it's something that isn't real urgent, they'll probably still help you deal with it. I don't want you calling them for every little spill of a cooking oil or a lotion or a toothpaste or whatever, but you know, just use your best judgment. And if it's causing you any sort of irritation, your eyes or your nose or your skin, by all means, back away and let professionals deal with it. It's a lot better to be safe than to risk injury or illness. I noticed a couple of those pictures too. When you're storing your chemicals, be very cognizant of what you're storing on a shelf next to each other. And I noticed the one that all the liquids are on the top, and then the second shelf is all their pesticide dusts. And what I would do is I would put those dusts on the top, and then liquids, and I'd always try to keep my heavier, which is typically your liquids, at the bottom, so your storage shed is less likely to tip over. So there's just a lot of little things that you can do at home to make your house safer. But bottom line, storing them away in that shed was the best thing to start with. And then within that shed, you could have smaller leak-proof containers into which you set your liquids and your other products. It's better to keep things separated, even if you don't understand the compatibility between the two, because as Sarah said, you could have one thing here, and they live happily together until they mix, and then it's bad. It's bad news, you know? So the safety is always your best bet there.
For friends joining us from outside of the county area, I do want to also encourage you to use your private partners when you're looking for disposal of options. While maybe the city, county organization can't take everything from you, you do still have access to those private partnerships. So those auto parts stores, some of the big box stores take back certain items. So still use that link to our waste reduction guide and see what kind of private partnerships we've created that you could possibly use. So Lincoln's Hazardous Waste Center is open on Wednesdays from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. And we are also open the third Saturday of the month by appointment. The reason it's by appointment is just so that we can staff it. So like Ralph and I actually work in that waste division, but you might also have, we staff it lean. So you might also have someone who's been cross-trained, who spends most of their time at the health department doing restaurant inspections, you know, or who's an air quality permit writer. So it's just so we can staff it. So Wednesdays are a great day to catch us between 9 a.m. and 1 or the third Saturday of the month. Just get in touch with us on our website, has2go.com. That's a great place to connect. I think kind of final question I see here is about whether or not Lincoln's Hazardous Waste Center could be that organization to go out and work in other counties. And I will just say that my understanding is that there are discussions that are happening about how we can use these resources kind of on the eastern side of the state to better serve the broader community. While I don't think we have that capability right now, Ralph, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that those conversations are happening about how we might be able to work collaboratively to use these resources to serve a broader community. Because again, our air quality, our water quality, you know, contaminated water that flows is going to flow. It's not going to stop at a county border, and we understand that. So we are active in those conversations as well. And I will just say, if you have insights, the right people to be talking with in your areas, connect them with us. We do love partnerships. We want to work together. So I think my final words are, please connect with us. This is a beginning point. Connect, ask questions. You know where to find us. Anything else from you, Ralph?
Well, I'd just like to say, I'm always happy to see new faces out there. We're open today. We're open this Saturday. And I also encourage people to provide some commentary on potentially new hours or new days that might work for you. We are looking at expanding our hours, and we know what's best for us, and we know what works for us. But we also want to hear from you, because we're here to serve you, the public, and we want to do that in the most efficient manner and what works best for everybody. So feel free to make some suggestions. And as far as the Saturday appointments only, we do ask for appointments, but if you show up on a Saturday and we're open, you're unlikely to be turned away. Unless you have latex paint, and then we're going to help you learn how to dry it, and then you got the afternoon free.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Sarah and Ralph. That was a very informative presentation. And hopefully, people will get in touch with you to learn more about hazardous waste and environmental health. I think we're ready to close. I think it's a little bit after 11 o'clock. So if you would all take the time to complete the survey that will come up, we would really appreciate it. And as Sarah mentioned, we're going to have another program on June 9th about safe cleaning products. So we would love to have you involved with that one as well. So thank you very much. It was a really good program. See you later.
Yeah.
And Renee, thank you too.